Finovate showcases cutting-edge banking and financial technology through a global conference series featuring short-form demos and thought leadership. Now, the conversation continues on the Finovate podcast.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Finovate podcast. Joining me today, we have Elizabeth Osborne, COO of Great Lakes Credit Union. Elizabeth, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we're going to get into some different things about how you're engaging with financial technology. But before we do, I want to just give you a minute up front to kind of give us some background on yourself and GLCU.
Yeah, absolutely. So hello, everyone. Elizabeth Osborne. I work for Great Lakes Credit Union. So Great Lakes Credit Union is a not-for-profit financial cooperative in and around the Chicago market. Some cool facts: we're low-income designated. We're HUD certified. We're actually one of, I believe, only 6 in the nation that are HUD certified. So we have some pretty cool niches, however you want to say it. Some people say it different ways. I call it a niche. But a lot of great ways to give back to our communities. I've been there a little over 3 years. This is my first credit union gig. Prior to this, I was in banking. I worked for large banks, regional banks, and I was also the CIO for a community savings bank in the Boston area. So excited to be back in Chicago. Moved here to be back in your family.
Excellent. And for the record, I say niche too. So if two of us are right, maybe we can get it going. Yeah. Let's start at a pretty high level here, because I think we're in a moment where there's obviously a lot of stressors being placed on financial institutions of all shapes and sizes. What would you say are the big picture challenges that you're facing as a credit union right now?
Yeah, so I think, this is the time to talk about this, because credit unions, banks, we're all in the budgeting and strategic planning time right now. And an item that typically comes up, at least it does for us, is we start out strategic planning by saying, okay, what are our threats out there? What are the things that we need to be most worried about? Kind of like a SWOT analysis, right? To gather all the facts and give us a good starting point on what are some areas we need to focus on, drive our attention towards. And so a challenge that came up and really bubbled up out of these conversations with my credit union this year, and frankly, I think it's a challenge majority of credit unions and banks as well have, is finding what I've termed, this is the acronym MVM, which stands for Most Valuable Member. Now, your most valuable member may not always be your most profitable member. It's really thinking about what are your goals? For us, our primary driver right now is smart growth. Smart growth obviously means inorganic, organic growth, factoring in the costs of either through mergers and acquisitions, through marketing campaigns, branch openings, etc. But you have to make it smart. And so we recognize that we cannot be everything to everyone. Even though we would love to be, we'd love to give everyone every product they'd ever dream of. But by honing in your focus on that most valuable member, that ensures that you are focusing time, resources, and money on the products and services that your members want, specifically those that you are trying to attract and retain. So that's really important to know. It's something that also drives a lot of marketing and communications as well. So this is across the industry. It's something we should all be focused on.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm glad we're catching you at the right time, because this is, I can tell you're talking about this on a daily basis at the moment.
Yeah.
One follow-up from me: how are you going about this process of determining who that kind of most valuable member is? I would imagine that that's not an easy process.
It is so not an easy process, and it's something we're still trying to figure out. So, we started out the process by I led a session with the executive team, and I'm like, well, why don't we start with our pillars, our standards of greatness? And so in that kind of gave us some little more of a focus on, well, what are the membership groups that we should be thinking about? That could be either seg-based, location-based, demographic, product, whatever the case, right? What are those? And so in those discussions, I then asked the executive team to throw out some ideas. Like, hey, who do you think our most valuable member is? Before we start pulling data to then determine if they are our most valuable member, who do you think it is? And the answers varied wildly. We had
Sure.
anything from, like our CLO is like, well, of course, it's lending product related. So he's like, most valuable members are those that have two products or more over the last two lending products or more over the last 3 or 5 years. Okay. Our CXO, so our Chief Experience Officer, he was focused on digital products. Okay, so he's like, well, those that log into digital banking every day or every month, those that are active and have a lot of transactions, we should focus those. An area that I brought up is I was like, well, we're low income designated. I think that's a huge opportunity there that we haven't really thought about because we could tie into their financial journey throughout their life cycle. That was my idea. We'll see. I think I have something there, but I haven't proved it out yet. So we then went and pulled the data. And so we're still flushing it out. Something we noticed is that we still need to pull in profitability. Like profitability is not going to drive every single piece of it. Because again, it's not always your most profitable member, but it's part of that story. And so our accounting team is introducing some solutions this year into next year that's going to help us to pull it. So hopefully next year we'll have the answer. Not there yet.
No, I think that's great, though, because this is a conversation that is a difficult conversation, but it's so valuable to have. And I applaud you all for having it. And you'll have to update us when you have some data on who kind of wins, whose vision is ultimately adopted. But I think it's such a good idea to have these kind of conversations as an organization. So let's switch gears a little bit now and talk about once you kind of have that piece nailed down, obviously the challenge then becomes, how do you find the right technologies to help you execute on that strategy? What new types of technologies are you looking at that you think will help you as you kind of go through this process and come out the other side?
Yeah, there's definitely quite a few out there. One is any solution that's going to give us better data insights. So data analytics solutions are top of mind. That actually partners really well with AI solutions because then you can then turn around and personalize those messages based on the data that you pulled. So those guardrails that you can put in place with AI, I think that's a huge focus. So we actually just partnered and signed a contract with Datava. Datava was at Finovate Fall. I think they won some big prize. I don't know exactly which one, but awesome partners. They have some pre-built dashboards and data insights that are just going to make it so much faster for us to be able to determine who our most valuable members are. A lot faster than what we have today. We have Power BI with the data warehouse. We stood that up a few years ago. It's really has been a challenge because of all the integrations, but this is kind of what I see as that next evolution. So that is going to help us overcome, for at least Great Lakes and many in the industry, overcome identifying that most valuable member and the challenges with determining that in our systems today.
Yeah. And just for the record, Datava was a winner in the Best FinTech Partnership category of the Finovate Awards with American Heritage Credit Union. So obviously they have had some success here with others like yourself. I think I think I'm practically obligated at this point to ask questions about artificial intelligence. But how excited are you about AI? It's something that's a hot topic in the innovation side of the ecosystem. What are you looking at it? Where do you think it could potentially add value for yourself?
Yeah, so I am super excited about AI because it really fits in and addresses so many use cases of challenges we are all trying to overcome. I think credit unions have been a little bit behind than banks. But I'm starting to see more of it happening. And so I think it's just it's a very interesting area that we should all be looking at. For Great Lakes Credit Union, we introduced our biggest launch of AI was last year. We introduced a conversational virtual Gen AI assistant named Olive. So she sits at the carrier level. And every time a member calls Great Lakes Credit Union, they start with a conversation with Olive. And so that particular introduction helped to address a need we have with meeting member needs, some more member service or customer service, because we had so many gaps. That was one area where we're like, man, we just are having a hard time staffing our call center. Calls were, 24/7, but we can't staff it 24/7. It just didn't make sense for our size. And so introducing AI there was a perfect fit. We've seen an over 200% increase in self-service calls, meaning that those members no longer need to talk to an employee since launch. And so that pickup was pretty immediate. We've been live for a year, and we consistently see an over 200% adoption. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think the results you're getting speak for themselves. And so that actually is a really good lead into my next question, which is, having a strategy of where you want to deploy technology, then picking vendors that you want to go forward with. The third part of this equation is obviously getting it actually implemented well on the ground level and making sure that the partner that you pick is able to deliver the results that you want in the real world. What are some of the strategies that you have when it comes to actually making these integrations a success and making sure that somebody who looks good on paper ends up becoming a real asset for you?
So a couple things that I focused on when I joined Great Lakes a little over 3 years ago was when I started, one of the teams assigned to me, they were like the business process improvement team. And these poor people, they were assigned pretty much all the dump work that all the other departments didn't want to deal with. And they're like, hey, this is an issue. Can you just fix it? Yeah. And so it was awful. They were the hardest working. They were both analysts trying to get it done. But we clearly did not have a good approach to change management. And then as I continued to dig into really where we were at with technology and enterprise-wide initiatives, on top of that, we also were not doing a good job of assessing vendors. We had a lot of like the shiny penny syndrome, where people would sign a contract really fast, but not really look into who else is out there. And so we knew we needed to make smarter decisions. So I made a proposal to my boss, Steve Buck, who's awesome. He's the CEO in the board, to highlight the need and the benefits of standing up a project management office. And so I stood it up. We defined our methodology. We wrote a charter. We had predefined requirements gathering templates. We have project plans now. We have created a freaking fantastic program that helps us to better roll out change across the organization. And I fully believe that we have been so successful because the entire institution committed to that PMO group. And there's a lot of trust in that. So that's been clear. However, before the PMO group is even involved, before they're asked to run a project, it all starts with your vendor due diligence program, vendor management. And so banks and credit unions, while we are definitely, we have a lot of regs we have to adhere to, the one that kind of stands out here is third-party oversight. And so there's programs and there's a process in place in our regulations that really requires that we have a thorough process, but it needs to be elevated a bit. And so what we've done is we've developed a pretty thorough business case process that ensures that, one, we don't sign too fast, that we have some checks and balances in there. We look at competitors. We compare the pros and cons and pricing and their reputation and all kinds of things against all of those competitors. We run them through our vendor risk management program. Some don't make it, especially when we launched AI. Some of the ones I was looking at didn't make it through there. They were a little newer and didn't have like the soft reports and stuff you need. And then others is taking a look at having a conversation with your network and the references to then determine, okay, it sounds great. I love the demo. I love the solution. They're looking like the right partner. What has your experience been? And so that business case in partnership with a really structured PMO has helped us to implement technology so much faster and cleaner. Introducing Olive with Interface AI, we were able to roll that out from kickoff to launch 7 weeks. And it was pretty impressive. A lot of it was, we made a decision to keep it more out of the box and simple. So that way we weren't overcomplicating. And that was the right decision to make.
No, but that's really impressive. But I think I just want to stress that obviously so much work has gone into that before you even get to the point where you have somebody that you want to bring in. You put yourself in a position where you're ready for it. You're anticipating, we know we're going to need to integrate with some people. Let's get that process ready first before we then go out and start bringing in specific folks. And I think this is something which I suspect not a lot of financial institutions do. I also suspect on the other side of the coin, a lot of the fintech innovators aren't really thinking about this as concretely as they should be, and thinking about, once I get this contract signed, once I have a customer and I need to go and start to work with them, that's a process that you want to have ironed out before you get to that point so that you can have this really smooth onboarding process. And so I applaud you for the work that you've done there. And I think this is a great example for others on both sides of the ecosystem to follow, because there's so much work that you can do ahead of time to put yourself in that strong position. We have just time for one question more. And so I want to bring it back to some more advice for the folks on the innovation side. What advice do you have for innovators who are looking to become that third-party provider for you? Obviously, this is something which I'm sure you get a ton of emails, of cold calls, of whatever form of outreach. How can somebody make sure that they get to the top of the pile and that you consider their solution above everybody else who is clamoring for your attention?
Absolutely. So thank you for asking that, because it is important for others to hear. And I want the right technology providers out there to get our attention. And so what I found is, one, is that a lot of the pitches that I hear, a lot of the demos are like, they're on autopilot, right? This is the same pitch, same demo that they gave to the credit union down the street, that they gave to a regional bank, et cetera, right? And so any way that our fintechs can, one, use Google. There's a lot of information out there. Do your homework and know our story. So if you're able to then tie in the Great Lakes Credit Union story, our values, things we're doing, we're all in the news. There's all kinds of great information out there. Tie them to how your solution will help us to really leapfrog into whatever that next strategic event is or goal is, right? For us, it's growth. So anyone who could tie it into that, it's going to tell our story with their fintech. One, it's going to catch my attention a lot more. And second, it's going to help me really tie the pieces together to say, we may just have something here to look forward to and to dig a little further into.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to what you said at the very beginning, right? Talking about your own engagement with your customers, you're able to understand them a lot more now than you could have, 10 or 20 years ago. And this creates an expectation that you address them as human beings, as personally as possible. And I think this is a fair expectation for people reaching out to yourself as well. There's so many tools somebody can go and figure out what Great Lakes Credit Union is all about, where you are, what types of customers you serve, and the more targeted that anybody can be, the more likely they are to have success. And so I think this is something which we've talked a lot about on this podcast. Hopefully, people start listening and start making the adjustment, because I still get cold emails from people who think that Finovate is a bank. And it's always just like, you didn't do even a little bit of homework before you sent this. And it is off-putting, and it kind of takes somebody and say, okay, you know what? Not only am I not going to give you the response that you want for that outreach, but I'm actually going to mentally kind of file you away as somebody who's unserious, now no longer deserving of my attention. So I think it's a really useful thing to be focusing on. I'm afraid we are out of time. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Elizabeth, thank you so much for sharing your perspective and some of the processes that you've put in place out there in Chicago. Appreciate you taking the time, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners have learned quite a bit.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Finovate Fall was awesome. Had a great time, met great partners, and really grew my network. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, pleasure.
The Finovate podcast is produced by Informa Connect in association with Provoke.fm Media. Check out Finovate.com for information on Finovate's upcoming shows and to learn how you can get involved. The discount code Finovate Podcast will save you 20% on tickets to all of our events. And you can email us at info@finovate.com for information on sponsoring, speaking, or demoing. Thanks for listening.